It's all starting. We are now live. Mr. Tim!
Mr. Lauren.
Welcome, everyone, and Mr. Tim especially, to This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing live show number 95.
Wow. 95.
Oh, and Holly's with us.
And
Holly!
with us. Hello, Holly.
She is feeling better. And Robert Cole. Wow. It's like
Robert
the
Cole.
party has begun.
Hello, Holly.
Hi.
Hey, Holly. Hey, Robert.
Holly's here. Wow.
See,
Gosh.
I'm always so happy when you're here. It's like Holly's here.
I so appreciate it. I don't get it, but I appreciate it. All I do is give you grief and check facts.
Well, that says a lot about our character.
We need somebody to do that. That's actually really important.
And hey, before we start, I just want to say Tim's script for this episode was outstanding. The rehearsal was flawless. I'm very excited about this episode, especially now that Holly's here. So
That's right. That's right. For those who don't know everybody, please let me make introductions. Mr. Tim Peter with Tim Peter and Associates, Mr. Robert Cole with Rock Cheetah, and Miss Holly Zoba with Signature Series. Well, we have actually, everybody thought the same great thought, and that is, of course, the big elephant in the room is the big report from Ann Minkler, which is 355 pages of damn.
Which I want to point out.
And today we will be going through every page in detail, line by line. So Tim, take it away.
But here's the thing, if we take the normal length of this show, the typical length of the show, and we go through the entire deck, we actually will do it 3 times slower than Mary Meeker actually delivers this. If you watch the video, she delivers the whole presentation in 33 minutes.
Wow. I didn't see the video. I did not watch the video.
She skipped sections, I think.
She does.
Yep.
Yeah,
every year.
Eating of 7 top items that Adweek thought was interesting, just because there are some interesting. I mean, there's some duh stuff, but there's some also really. I didn't know that, so I'm going to leave it open because there's just a whole mess of stuff. And I know, Robert, you've read every page already. Tim, you're probably the same. I kind of went and hit the highlights on some of the stuff. So, and then Holly, I don't know whether it was wonderful bedtime reading or not. It was a big pile of stuff, that's for sure. What's some things that stood out for everybody? What are some things that just were like, okay, that's interesting?
Well, I mean,
where do you start?
I'll dive in. I'll tell you the ones that I focused on. So I mentioned this the other day in our private discussion. I did a podcast episode about this. I do every year. I've covered the Mary Meeker Internet Trends Report on my site pretty much every year for the last 6 or 7. She's been doing this for, Robert, how long? A decade or more? Maybe
I believe because they weren't very good before she referenced timpeter.com for all of the sources for her stats. So.
No, I just mean that this is something like, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of like my year revolves around this thing coming out because there's so much good information in there. For those who don't know Mary Meeker, it's probably a good idea. I'm going to look up her bio real quick because I always get it wrong. But she is a venture capitalist. She has been around for a long time. She is today at KPCB, Kleiner Perkins Caulfield Byers. She actually really came to prominence working at Morgan Stanley, and she was the lead manager for the IPO for Netscape. So, I mean, this is somebody who really knows digital, really knows the internet, and has been involved with it since the earliest days. Netscape was one of her first investments, and she led the IPO. Google, she led the IPO for that. She did a bunch of work with Facebook. So she championed early on Dell, Microsoft, Intuit, Netscape, AOL, Amazon.com, Yahoo, eBay, and Google. So if there's
I've heard of some of those.
Yeah. So if there's somebody out there who really gets the internet and gets digital and what it means, certainly you would have to include Mary Meeker at the top of almost any list of those. Now, when I look at it, I always focus on a couple of areas. that are relevant to me. There might be things that are more interesting to other people in the audience or other people out there. She talks a lot about things like China, India, healthcare, media, the cloud, gaming, etc. The stuff I find interesting is around internet use generally, mobile use specifically, e-commerce specifically, and this go round, her assessment of Facebook and Google and their dominance and how big they are and are likely to get. And certainly that's what I focused on in the podcast episode the other day. But I mean, we can talk about any of those topics depending on what interests you all, right?
I think we should just go section by section, not page by page. But I don't know, how many sections were there? Like 6 or something like that? Yeah, six or seven. Yeah. So the first section was online advertising and e-commerce.
Yep.
And her little synopsis is certainly, advertising growth is huge. It's being driven heavily by mobile growth. The numbers are pretty stunning, but the key is the measurability of the advertising. So I think one key stat that she had was that mobile, or not just mobile, but online advertising is going to exceed television this year. Right. And that's a big thing. And the amazing thing was the internet, or was the engagement on mobile, that right now, I think it's in the US, time spent per adult user per day on digital media for 2016, 2.2 hours on a desktop or laptop, 3.1 hours on a mobile.
And
so that's why it wins.
Mobile is up.
Sort of thing.
Mobile's
and
up.
5 years ago.
Right. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mobile was less than an hour 5 years ago.
Yeah. In 2009, it was about 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's now 55% of people's online media consumption every single day, mobile. And the crazy part about that, when you think about media, when you think about the marketing aspect of this that I think is really interesting, was she has a stat that print is still heavily over-indexed in terms of ad spend. So people spend about 4% of their day with print, but print consumes about 12% of media dollars. Mobile, by contrast, people spend 29% of their day, 28% of their day in terms of total media consumption with mobile. And it's only getting 21% of media spend. Oh my gosh, Ed St. Ange made it.
What?
So mobile's got some. Hey, Ed, he made it.
I did.
It's awesome. So we're just talking about
it's not the office of offices, but
Oh no, it's a Hyatt in Miami.
Wow. I stayed there. I know that property.
I know those curtains anywhere.
I know those curtains anywhere. So we were just talking about some of the interesting stats around mobile from the Mary Meeker report.
Oh, I didn't get a chance to read it yet. I've been traveling.
All right. Well, Ed, go ahead.
Go ahead. Can I ask you a question? So so it's about 5.5 hours total per day for media consumption is what? 2.5
online media consumption. Online. Total media consumption per day is more. I don't remember the number.
Yeah, so it's actually internet usage.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, like in 2009, what was total media consumption period per day?
Well, that's just online. Okay, so this is how often you're on the internet, right? So through whatever you're doing. So you may be, doing whatever. But in 2009, it was about 3 hours. It's now up to 5.6.
Wow.
That makes sense.
It's incredible.
Yeah, because people don't walk anymore without looking at their phone.
Right.
People don't stand in elevators anymore without looking at their phones, and people don't eat anymore without looking at their phones. So that makes sense.
Right. Well, and the craziest part for me, actually, there's two stats that are very related that I think are critically important. It's going to touch on something, Ed, I think you've said a number of times. But first, let me give the setup, and then I'll say what you say all the time that I think is pretty wild. So Facebook and Google consumed 85% of the growth in internet ad spending in 2015 and 2016. Now, I want to be really clear about how that's stated because Forbes magazine got that wrong and said that they consumed 85% of the internet media spend. They did not get 85% of the spend. They got 85% of the growth in spend over those 2 years. Right. Still, that's huge, right? That's amazing. Actually, let me just give the second stat because it leads to Ed's. It leads to Ed's thing that's amazing. When we look at streaming video, so this is on slide 165 of the deck. When we look at streaming video, it used to be on mobile, right? So remember, mobile is the biggest place where people spend online. So now we're talking about video on mobile specifically. I don't remember if this was last year or the year before. I don't have the number in front of me, but YouTube was 30% in the last period, which I don't remember if it was last year or the year before or something like that. Now it is 20% of streaming video. Facebook is now 15%, up from 5% during that same period. Instagram is 7.5%, up from 0. So 0, right? So Facebook and Instagram, which are the same company after all, actually have more streaming video use than YouTube does.
Yeah.
And as Ed has talked about many times, Facebook is still probably one of the best values. Is still underpriced from a marketing spend perspective. So to turn this into something, people who watch this can use, Facebook's got real opportunities as ways to market your property because it's inexpensive relative, but it actually gets more use than YouTube does when we talk about things like streaming video. So lots of opportunity there that's tremendously exciting.
And one point to make on that, just to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just saying that, like, look what's happening now. It's in your stream of consciousness, like the things going on with the Orlando right now. I found that pop up on my Facebook feed long before I ever saw newscasting.
What's going on with Orlando
right now?
Oh, they're doing live coverage. They found an unidentified package in front of the nightclub that was unfortunately the tragedy. And
man.
You got 3 helicopters floating around doing live stream. You got street level people doing live stream. You got like 10 different angles on something that even the mainstream media in the midst of their morning shows hasn't even released yet.
Right.
And you're aware of what's going on.
Right.
And yet YouTube doesn't have that draw. You don't go to YouTube to find out what's going on. You go to YouTube.
Right. Well, you don't dawdle on YouTube. You don't go, I'm bored. I'm going to look at YouTube.
Right.
I totally do.
Some people do, Ed. There
Some
are
people do.
20% of the people who consume video.
That's the reason why I don't like Star Wars.
No, but what YouTube does, though, is now with the autoplay and the next recommended, people will go stream through it.
Once they've got you, they keep you. There's no question.
Yeah. I will
and also, to be fair to YouTube,
watch video.
To be fair to YouTube, I'm sure some of those stats that Facebook and Instagram are getting are autoplay in news.
Oh, sure. Oh, for sure.
So people aren't actually watching the videos. I'd actually say that on YouTube, people are watching the videos.
For sure. No, that's
one other thing to note. If you are going to do video advertising on Facebook or Instagram, you want to have text coming up. Because a lot of people will watch the video and they want to read the closed captioning because they don't want to listen.
Caption.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think
I do know with their marketing minutes, I do the transcripts because YouTube will do the transcripts for you if your video is less than 20 minutes. They'll do the transcripts, although you got to go in and clean it all up because they do a.
So you're saying
want to edit them.
You're saying one of your Monday marketing minutes was under 20 minutes and you were able to use it?
Yes, it was. It's the marketing moment, and a moment is a long time.
A moment.
This show has to get chopped up into 12 videos.
They don't do this video.
Lauren, when he says minute, he's like, a minute on Pluto.
I'll be there in a minute. Yeah,
I'll be there in a minute. I'll be gone in a minute.
See you in a week.
Actually, just to move back a little bit on, I know there's a question from Holly mentioned, Tim mentioned the 85% of the internet advertising growth, but I think it's important to have the raw numbers too, because I think those really pull things into perspective. So Google right now is taking in about $35 billion a year in internet advertising revenue. That grew 20% year over year. So that's a big chunk of growth. So remember that number, 35 billion. Facebook is only at around maybe 14 billion or so. So they're less than half the size of the advertising that Google has, but their growth trajectory is 62%. So smaller, but catching up. I find the most interesting everybody else, right? They total about.
Wait, we missed part of that. You and Ed vanished for a moment.
Oh, sorry about
the most
that.
Interesting part.
So what did you miss? The most interesting part is it's a whole thing to keep you in suspense, right? Are the others, which is everybody else. So everybody else is at about 24 billion. So everybody else is about 2/3 of what Google's getting, and here's Facebook growing at 62% at 14 billion. About 60% of what they have, but the others are only growing at 9%.
Now the one thing I would think about with this, and I don't know the answer to this. I think you have to look at I don't think there's a blanket statement you can make here, and I think as marketers, you need to look at on a case-by-case basis. But I've mentioned Stratechery many times before, Ben Thompson and his podcast Exponent. Well worth listening to. Really, really good stuff. Very, very good analyst. One of the things he talked about is one of the reasons he thinks Google and Facebook are in such good position is he said, a lot of marketers, when they talk about ROI, in addition to looking at the R, they also look at the I. They're looking for where's the one place where I can just spend my money and not have to drive myself crazy. And so the large folks do tend to attract a lot of investment,
it's
from
gravity.
A Google or Facebook. It's just gravity. Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. What I would say is that those folks who are the 24 billion, who are only getting 15% of the growth, could be great opportunities to market because you're not competing head-to-head with an Expedia there. You're not competing head-to-head with a Booking there. You're not competing head-to-head with everyone else there if your customer base is there. So a Snap, Pinterest, something else, could create opportunities and shouldn't be dismissed out of hand, particularly when you don't have the budget that, an OTA does. So it's something to think about in terms of if you're doing paid media, can you look to some of those things that aren't just Facebook or just Google, which I also think you should do. But, can you find some edge cases or some niches where you can find great return on spend because it's cheap relative to the market?
I mean, one thing.
And there's an interest. I think Meeker makes a really interesting point on that because she says ad measurability. She calls it a triple-edged sword because she goes, when things are measured, that's certainly a good thing, but people don't always like what they see, right? So that whole return on investment. So somebody who pitches, go with Pinterest. This is going to be great. We think it's going to work, and then all of a sudden you have some stats that show it didn't work. All of a sudden that can increase some risk. So that whole gravity factor of nobody ever gets fired for buying IBM, which was years and years ago, which maybe they do now, I'm not sure. Well, but that sort of thing, it's safer, lower risk. But then again, the risk return, if you're going to take a lower risk, your returns probably aren't going to be as good.
And one of the things people need to take into consideration when they're going to try advertising on a different network is if you initially see failure, you should first look at what you did wrong or what you got wrong. Right. Because what someone's expecting from an experience in Facebook versus what someone's expecting in Instagram versus Pinterest versus Snap is very different. Right. And and then the other thing to understand is it may not just be the ad you got wrong. You may have gotten the experience behind the ad wrong. Right. So, if you're going to wade into networks that you don't understand, you should spend some time understanding them before you put real effort in attached to spend behind it, because you may give yourself the false understanding that advertising doesn't work there. Advertising does work if you understand the state of mind that the audience is in. And a lot of things that people just completely get wrong on social in general is they follow traditional ads. And traditional ads stick out like a sore thumb in the social verse because they're unauthentic.
Right.
And they're based on bragging, and that doesn't work, especially when people are in the mindset of being in the social world.
So one of the things that I'm going to jump to a slightly different part of the deck for a second, because Ed, that's a perfect setup for something else Meeker talked about. And you all will be familiar with this because it's something I talk about a ton, is the fact that, media today is a distribution channel. Right? When people are one click away from buying, it's not advertising, it's distribution, right? And she had a great line. God, I wish I'd come up with this line where she said, the content is the store, right? So if you have the wrong content in the wrong channel, your store is going to fail.
Right.
So what you said is exactly right. You've heard me say it as content is king, customer experience is queen, data is the crown jewels. It's the same concept, right? You've got to align that experience end to end and make sure you've got the right content for the right audience on the right channel for it to actually work well. And if it doesn't
the right
work,
conversion experience behind it.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Because you also have to understand where in the funnel are these people.
That's exactly right.
So for hotels specifically, if you're running Facebook ads around trying to inspire them, driving them to your website is the wrong answer, because your website's a transaction engine. It's designed for book now. And the discovery aspects of even the better hotel websites are pretty weak. So you need to think through the experience that goes behind the ad, and it should all be tied in. You do that, you will get the biggest bang for your buck in advertising.
Right.
And by the way, social is like really important for hotels, because you can go very top of funnel and win before Expedia, Marriott, Hilton, Airbnb, TripAdvisor spends are even out there, because they're not going super high in inspiration phase. They're trying to just be present, to be the lucky ones that get the click. That's where all their budgets are.
Yeah.
Right.
And they've priced you out. Anything you're getting in there, you found a gap or you got lucky.
Well, what's the first rule of hospitality marketing? First rule of hospitality marketing.
Have hospitality in it?
Oh, sure. Let's sell the destination first. Right?
Yeah, it's also the first rule of real estate.
Yeah. Right.
Location,
exactly.
location.
Location, right? For most hotels, for many hotels, I shouldn't say most hotels, but for many hotels, you're not the reason they're going there. Obviously, if you're a resort or something else, that's different. But I mean, for many hotels, there's lots of other reasons people are going where they're going. If you can't convince them to go there in the first place, you've already lost.
Yep.
Sell yourself second, sell the destination first.
We kind of shed some old school thought mentalities as we keep using more and more technologies and so forth, but some of the old mannerisms are still true. Back before all of this was something, you had influencers. You had the neighbor that always traveled and discovered new places. You had the neighbor that only followed the neighbors that discovered the new places. They weren't the ones that found the new places. They're the ones that went that everybody else told them to go to. So you had influencers. I bought a certain product all the time. So when you were thinking about buying that product, you'd come to me and ask me my opinion about the product. Those things still exist in our world. Yeah. And so too, some of the adages of it's not what you know, it's who you know. And this goes to a little bit of how I see Flip2. I described this to someone as to what you do in a way that they somehow got to understand. It's like, you can be the best at everything that you do and walk into a room full of strangers and nobody knows you. Yet you have this amazing product. Okay. By the same token, you walk in and you know the key people in that room, and you can have the shittiest product, but you're still going to be included in conversations.
That's how half the vendors in this industry have gotten to success.
Yeah, right. So it's a matter of, so when you're dealing with social, like you're talking about social, being able to jump to the top of the funnel, it's because if your friend referred something about you to their group of people that are following them on the new mediums that we use, that has a lot more prevalence in a decision process for that person, that all the research they did through all the channels, platforms, and advertising that was presented to them, because their friend, who they look as an authority in that space of traveling to Florida or traveling to wherever they're now interested in going to, are going to listen to what they said was their experience values. So social has that same, only amplified now. It's still an old school tactic.
Certain trips for people have really high stakes. Like, I'm less concerned about a trip that I book that I'm going on by myself to go meet with someone than I am when I'm bringing my kids with me. When I'm bringing my kids with me, it's as if I know nothing about travel, because all of a sudden my experience in travel means nothing, because I never thought about the lens of people with kids trying to do the same thing. So even travel professionals can hit points where it is overwhelming trying to figure out what you want to do with this rare time that you get. And, you want to make sure you're going to have a good time. So you tend to kind of look for, has someone else already gone through the pain of figuring out this? And, it's really easy to just tie to that. Because, listen, back in the day, I think it was a bit harder for people to even consider going to exotic places. But nowadays, exotic places are kind of not that exotic, because you can discover them and you can go there and you can do the things. So, the mindset of influence is, really, really big, because there are certain times that you're in that mentality, even when you're someone who's like, yeah, I like to forge new paths. Yeah, until, someone else's good time is also on that line, you kind of take it a little safer.
Right. Very true. Very true. Yep.
No, we used to talk about this from time to time, just to give a sense for people all across the scale. We used to talk about this in my Wyndham days, specifically with economy segment, right? Select service, product, and the like. We had a lot of people where we had 100% share of wallet because they traveled once a year and they took the kids to Disney. And that trip was a huge deal for them. Yeah. Right. And let's be fair. Nobody
you had 100% share of their accommodation.
That's what I mean. Disney, we had 100.
Disney had 90% of everything else.
Had 90%.
Right. Oh God, 99%. Please, we were at $49 ADR in some cases, but realistically, we had 100% of their hotel spend.
Yes.
Right, annually.
Yep.
And what we weren't good at then, and I would argue some people still aren't good at today, and we knew we weren't good at it. There wasn't social. There weren't the things to capture it. Was we didn't know how to tell that story as effectively as we probably could have to encourage people of, here's why you want to stay here when you're going to Orlando, for instance. Right?
Yeah, because, by the way, we're as nice as the $350 a night economy offering on Disney property.
That's right. So, that's exactly right.
And you're not going to spend any time with us. You're going to go to the park.
Right.
You're going to come back and you're going to go to sleep because.
And you want the room to be clean, and you want the breakfast to be decent, and you want to be able to get in and out when you want to be able to get in and out, because you want to spend most of your time in the park or in the pool.
Yep. Right. Yeah. I mean, and a perfect example of this is I'm currently helping Tim plan his family vacation.
As a matter of fact, Ed is. This is true.
Really?
Yes, because
I had no idea.
Of which, we have to have a conversation about that later.
Okay. Because he's coming to Orlando.
Should we post? Should we post? I think we should post Ed's email address and direct, mobile number, because Ed is an Orlando travel planner, inbound agent.
By the way, Ed, we go for NASA.
You froze up. I missed all of that.
Oh, really? Am I still here?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay. I said Thundercats maybe go for NASA.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, no, Tim mentioned to me he was coming to Orlando, and he was coming at kind of a peak time. So I had some advice that even a travel person, if you don't live here, you don't know this. Yeah. And even though, because Tim has connections, much higher than those of us on this call today. I did point out to him that one of the nights he should stay on property so he can get the Universal Fast Passes for the days of the Universal, because that will cover the cost of the room, basically. And you'll actually get to do something, because when he's coming, if you don't have Fast Pass, you're not doing anything.
No, it's the kind of stuff, this is a great example. I've been to Orlando. I cannot tell you how many times in my life. I've been there a ton. But when I go to Orlando, and this goes back to Ed's point about the stakes of the trip, I go to Orlando for 2 reasons. I took my kids to Disney when they were little, and it mattered a ton. And I go there for conferences all the time, and I spend no time at all anywhere except the damn convention center.
It could be anywhere, right?
I could be anywhere, in any city, anywhere in the world. And I don't know the first thing about Orlando. I know I drive. I drive in the convention center, and that's it. Because that's where I spent most of my time.
The first 27 times that I was in Atlanta, I did not venture more than a square mile from the airport.
Right.
I didn't even know Atlanta had people who lived there. I just figured it was nothing but Delta.
I've literally
had a choice one time in Atlanta to ride the train from the airport to Buckhead. But only after midnight. And there's an interesting group of people that ride the train after midnight. People that you don't really want to run into.
Again, that could be anywhere. That's true.
It's true.
New York.
Yeah. Where's anywhere?
New York's pretty nice for that.
I'm going to digress for 1 second. Not that we don't do this here, but I have to tell my 2 Atlanta travel stories, and they're both incredibly quick. I've been to Atlanta twice in my life. Both times I arrived on the first flight in, and both times I left on the latest flight out, after
same
5
day.
o'clock.
You've never slept in Atlanta.
Same day. I've never slept in Atlanta ever. In and out, same day, twice. The only times I've ever been to Atlanta.
Oh, wow. It's a pretty city. Actually, that's really
but to tie this back to why this is important to understand is I find that too many hotels are trying to play most of their marketing effort in that be present to win phase. And you were just outclassed and outgunned. You just cannot. The phase where the traveler has already decided all their trip and they're just booking.
Yeah.
That
Order
is
taking.
not, that's not the time to be spending money. Unless you've figured out an algorithm that, the big advertisers have missed. That's not the time. You should be deep in retargeting spend at that point. You should have already had the person while they were trying to figure out where they were wanting to go. Because, listen, $8 billion, that's just 2 companies. $8 billion a year on just 2 platforms.
Right.
I mean, so they're spending
and one of them
money.
is actually called Booking.com. If you think you're going to do a better job at booking than Booking.com, it's kind of what they
hotels.com kind of renates for what they do too.
And then right behind them are all the brands.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, they're right there, hiking up that money too. And then right behind them are all the destination marketing organizations. Right. Because they're all executing on the same advertising strategy. So if you're trying to play in that arena and you're playing with less than $200 million, you're playing the wrong game. You need targets with your cash. And there are 2 types of targets. There's the really niche search that you figured out that the others haven't.
Super long tail.
And then there's really top of funnel.
I'm gonna challenge that in the details, but I agree with you conceptually, Ed. I want to be fair. To bring this back to the Mary Meeker thing just for a moment. One of the things that she talked about, slides 64 to 78, are all about e-commerce, and where I think she's completely right, and what I think you're getting at, Ed, and I agree with this, is she talked really about how e-commerce is increasingly more about the overall experience. It's not just, about checkout. It's not just about payment types. It's all about the overall experience. She quotes Neil Blumenthal of Warby Parker, who said, "I don't think retail is dead. Mediocre retail experiences are dead."
Yep.
Right? She talks about the fact that right now we're in the middle of a record-setting number of store closures. Probably more retail outlets will close this year than any time in the past 20 years.
But look who they are.
At the same time, hold on for 1 second. At the same time, Amazon is opening stores. As are a lot of other online-only retailers, because what they've come to recognize is we need to have great experiences to draw people in.
Well, and that's why there's also been a resurgence in boutique retail.
Right. Mm-hmm. And boutique hotels.
Small business coming back, providing something of specialty, which was killed by the years of Best Buy and Walmart and Sam's Club and all these players who just basically said, no, the consumers don't want that special treatment. They don't want that one-to-one. And what they got wrong was, and they got their own false positive here, is they just had a better price. And they had a better price because they had scale. But that's gone away because now a small boutique in a small town can buy at the same price as a big player because they can order from Alibaba. Like they don't have this weird restriction of access to sellers. Right. So that's where I'm actually excited about what Amazon's done to retail, because it's undoing the Walmart effect. I've watched now 2 towns that I had lived in my life that were great, had tons of small businesses, were just great little villages, if you will. And Walmart came in and just decimated the area, and all these store owners ended up working at Walmart. And I always looked at that, and I always said, you need to fight Walmart any chance you get because they destroy local economies. And what Amazon's done is Amazon's destroyed them, their value prop, and is now opened a gap for the small business again. And even if you look at how Walmart's trying to react to it, they're trying to bring specialty business into their practice and everything. And they're trying to adapt, but I wouldn't be sad to see Walmart go away.
Well, I see the war though a little bit differently. Amazon's fighting the battle in the cities, and Walmart is really in the rural areas, right? Now, go ahead. No, but that's basically how the strategies are breaking out. Amazon's going for the higher end consumer. They're focusing on the Echo, things like that. And yes, they certainly are huge, and they cover everybody. And Prime is great, and you can get the packages. But for Walmart devours all the stuff that Amazon Go is going to go after, right? With all the, when they start doing the groceries and little shops where you can start coming in and check out, seamlessly. Yes, that's going to start impacting Walmart. But right now, Walmart is just, again, it's this dominant factor, the buying power, the cost of goods, and the prices. They devour these smaller and suburban communities, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, that gets into a whole.
So
I don't want to go too far.
The reality is 90% of goods are still bought in real life as opposed to digitally. Yeah. I mean, that's
for sure.
So that's why.
To bring this back to hotels, I'll give you an example. You all know I love to beat on TripAdvisor because I feel like they're the devil that's not talked about enough. So I got another perfect example that builds my case. I recently went and stayed at the Cheyenne Mountain Resort at a benchmark conference, and after checkout, I mean, I was blown away by this resort. So I did something I don't do a lot. I actually went and wrote a review because they cared a lot about it. So I wrote a review on TripAdvisor. 8 days later, I got an email from TripAdvisor advertising other hotels in Colorado Springs saying, next time you come back, try one of these places. Cheyenne Mountain Resort wasn't on that. Yep. So Cheyenne Mountain Resort pushed me to TripAdvisor. And then TripAdvisor said, great, now go stay somewhere else. Don't ever stay there.
That sort of thing may be the Achilles heel of Red Lion's strategy of teaming up with Expedia to, get more people into their program. That, these large organizations, they aren't stupid.
By the way, that's my new bingo thing. I'm going to beat on TripAdvisor every show. So anyways, I apologize.
I invited Brian.
I do have to leave. I'm at the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association's event where they actually spent the morning beating on TripAdvisor. I was like, so you all have a great weekend. I'll see you next week and talk to you all soon.
Later, Ed.
Thanks for making the time. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to beat up on Ed in absentia.
Oh, wait, no,
exactly. Yeah,
I'm not really going to beat up on Ed. I am going to push back on the one thing, going back to the Walmart thing for a second. Just